Hello, my name is Mark Ruiz Evans. A few days ago, I did something that might have been unwise. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. I just did it in a fit of rage. I was very upset at a lot of the lies that I saw in the news regarding neo Nazis in Ukraine. And so I did the inaugural episode of a show called Counter Narrative, where I explained the narrative the mainstream news is giving. And then I explained what the counter narrative could be. And I left it open to you to decide, providing mainstream sources that you could double check on your own. And what we found, or what I was able to show, was that despite the popular press idea that there is no neo-Nazi problem in Ukraine, there is a big neo-Nazi problem in Ukraine. I just ended at a previous show on National Divorce Talk Raw where I bet Bill, and Bill gave me a lot of information on, all right, here we go. Here's Bill. So Bill, I see you, and I just posted this link. Bill, if you click that link, you can join the show. I got some new information from Bill. Bill watched the first episode of Counter Narrative, liked the show. I've had a couple different people that I had never talked to before who saw that show and said it was pretty good and good. So I have found even more information that I wasn't even aware of. And I'm actively looking for this stuff and searching for it. And I found even more information on the racism in Ukraine. Bill, it says your device is not connected. You need to click out and then click back in. So Bill's going to come back in. You need to connect your microphone and camera before I can add you to the stream. So you had it on before. It's saying Bill, it's saying your microphone and camera aren't connected. You got the link. So if you can, I don't know, if you can log back in, and then when you click in, activate your microphone and your camera. I wanted to bring Bill in because he watched that episode of Counter Narrative and gave me even more information. I'll be showing that here in just a second. Additionally, another person watched that episode of Counter Narrative and gave me even more information on the topic of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. So you can watch the first episode of Counter Narrative here on my channel, Marcus Ruiz Evans at YouTube. It's called Counter Narrative, and it talked about the neo-Nazis in Ukraine. We're going to provide even more information of that problem, that there is a real issue. So I'm going to start doing a share screen, and we'll start walking through this, and periodically I will check for Bill. I learned of this because of Bill. So let me do a share screen real quick. Oh, hold on.
With you.
There you go. Bill. So before we get into it, you saw the first episode of Counter Narrative that I did, and it was on neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And we just got to talking, and I think you said it is a real problem, and the Western mainstream media is lying about how big a problem it is. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did indeed, and it isn't just a problem; it is a profound problem on a grand scale that no one is talking about, because the people who have traveled there, they know how big it is. The problem is, if they start reporting on it there, they will get killed and they will disappear. They'll end up as one of those mysterious bodies in a pit somewhere. So the Azov battalion, or the neo-Nazis, let's just cycle back to around 2010, when after the Soviet Union broke up, you have Leonid Kuchma as a president, and then he was followed up with the woman president of Ukraine. her name, Timoshenko, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Her name was there, Yulia Timoshenko. Yes. And in that time frame, there were oligarchs. There were people who grabbed Ukrainian infrastructure and were running the infrastructure like their own businesses. And one particular name pops up all the time. A guy by the name of Igor Komotsky. If you Kolomo.
There it is.
Yep. He is a nasty piece of work. He is Jewish, but don't let that fool you. Do not let that fool you. He had quite a lot of control over there, and in fact, the former president of Ukraine, Poroshenko, who had a nickname of the Chocolate King because he owned a chocolate business, was another person of interest to have a look at as well. Now, Komotsky. Here's the interesting tie-in. Kolomoisky's TV channel was the one that which Zelensky gained his notoriety on.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yes, and Kolomoisky supported Zelensky in his campaign. And if you look up Zelensky and Kolomoisky, you'll see straight away the link mentioned there. And
so we real quick, just to for everybody following along, the guy's name is Igor Komotsky. He is super corrupt. Here's the Federal Department of State, which watches for terrorists. Federal government, Department of State, saying this guy is bad news, super corrupt, bad for Ukraine, and they said that last year. So now we're going to type in Igor Komotsky and Zelensky, and what you're saying is Igor Komotsky funded the TV station that allowed Zelensky to get famous.
That's correct. That was his TV channel, and so the sad part about it. The sad part about it is that you see the photograph of Kolomoisky come up. You see the person who he is. Now, guess where he's hiding out at the moment? He's not in Ukraine. He's actually living it up in Switzerland.
Makes sense.
Okay, and the word is that he's doing a deal with the Russians so he can come back. But I don't think the Russians want him back at all because they don't have him in. They don't like oligarchs. So, especially one like this, he's got quite a bit of real estate and things like. And this is what the U.S. State Department needs to do. They need to seize his assets.
If they're seizing everyone else's assets and they just said this guy's a bad dude.
Yep. And if you keep cycling down, you'll see the link. You should see the link to Zelensky pop up there.
I want to get down to bankrolling south and then it's in here. Just want to find it. Komotsky.
There you are. Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's now president, would not be where he is today without Komotsky.
Yeah, he is.
Zelensky
as an actor and entertainer.
Would not be where he is today without this guy who the U.S. State Department has said is bad news for Ukraine. As an actor and entertainer, Zelensky had worked for Kolomoisky's media network, which then gave him forum support, which he stood as a candidate. Zelensky was seen as the Kolomoisky candidate. He appointed one of Kolomoisky's lawyers as his advisors and held meetings with the controversial oligarch even as he campaigned as the anti-oligarch. In early 2001, Zelensky reportedly breached his own COVID lockdown rules to have a party with Kolomoisky's Kiev apartment. There it is.
Yeah, it's there in black and white. Now the story gets even more weird or sinister. So people like Kolomoisky were there in the background, and they were robbing Ukraine left, right, and center. And I'll ask you a simple question here, Marcus. Have you ever seen a foot-deep pothole in a major road in the U.S.?
A pothole in a major road in the U.S.? Yes.
Yes, a foot deep, 12 inches deep.
It's rare, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, as having traveled to that region, it's a very common sight even on their major highways. Now, keep this in mind here. This is a country that has got wonderful resources in iron ore, in oil and gas, and wheat fields, and agriculture. Yet they have foot deep potholes on a major highway. Why is that? How can that happen? And that leads on to the massive corruption in Ukraine that took place from all the way since their separation from the Soviet Union to this day. I've actually seen the potholes. I've been in a car where the driver had to swerve violently to avoid the pothole, and we nearly ended up in the bushes. It was that bad because you can break your axle if you hit the pothole at high speed. So when I asked myself the question, I was trying to see, well, what's causing all this problem? And you start to see the massive corruption in that country, and the people are doing to survive because the salaries are poor, and you have all these robber barons out there. They don't give a damn about their own people. They run their own people into the ground. It's all about what they can get from you. And another little heads up for you, Marcus. If you look up on the corruption index, where does Ukraine stand on the corruption index? I saw it on a listing that it was sitting between Sierra Leone and Zaire on the corruption index. And this is a European country.
Let's take a look at that. Just to back up, so Igor Komotsky was a oligarch. He is considered a corrupt person and bad for democracy, according to the U.S. federal government. And multiple articles, and I've never heard of this before, again, makes me think I'm not hearing the full story, was that Zelensky basically was birthed by this guy. He went on his network. He gave him the money. He promoted Zelensky as a candidate. Zelensky wouldn't have been a candidate, wouldn't have been able to be seen as a candidate, wouldn't have the fame that he had or the money to run a campaign without this guy Komotsky, who is a horrible person and a oligarch who's super corrupt. And the interesting thing that grabbed me was when they were talking about who is Komotsky, they were saying Zelensky's running a campaign of targeting the oligarchs and bringing equality while hanging out with an oligarch and taking his money. So I don't see how you can be taken as honest about your reform. Hey, I'm going to reform the oligarchs, but not this guy who got me started, who I'll hang out with and broke COVID-19 protocols to hang out with and go to his birthday party and take his money and make sure that nothing bad happens to him. But believe me when I say I'm actually about reform. That's roughly what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. And it gets even more hilarious than that. Now, Zelensky was in a show, or a TV show, which I suppose the closest thing to that would remind you is The West Wing, and it was similar to that, and it was featured on Kolomoisky's network. And this show talked about a teacher who becomes a president. So people in Ukraine were so desperate for a change that when Zelensky started running in reality for the presidency, they all jumped on to support this guy. They were so desperate for a dream. They thought, well, maybe he might be the one that breaks the camel's back. It might be that person that changes things. And boy, how they have been fooled. They now realize they've been taken for a fool, because it was all about Kolomoisky getting his hands in the pocket of the president. Where Zelensky becomes a hand puppet for Kolomoisky. But on the way, as they say in that famous film, on the way to the forum, something funny happened on the way to the forum.
Right.
Well, what happened was Zelensky got surrounded by the neo-Nazis who were already in the parliament. And they said to him, brother, if you don't behave, we're going to kill you. So there's Mr. Zelensky quivering in his boots, saying, okay, what do you want me to do? And it doesn't matter whether he was Jewish or non-Jewish. That's got nothing to do with it. He's talking about his own survival now, and that's what he is being now. Even Kolomoisky was scared off. He's gone to Switzerland, but meanwhile, the neo-Nazis, they now know they've got the president in their back pocket.
When did that happen? That the neo-Nazis threatened Zelensky?
Apparently, 6 months after he became president, because he changed his tune very suddenly, and it all happened so quickly. And you will see there was a change in the stance he took. In his stance, it changed completely from what he had been purporting initially to to being a tool of the neo-Nazis. There, they had him. They really had him there because he's not really a brave person, because he's an actor. I mean, and not everyone is a brave person.
That's something I was curious about when he was. I mean, the guy came out with a military uniform the day of the invasion, and I'm like,
yeah,
who does?
No. That photograph was taken months earlier when he visited the Azov battalion.
Oh, really?
Yes. He hasn't been on the front lines down there at all. He's been traveling between Poland and Kiev. But he has not been down the front lines. Everyone thinks he's been on the front lines, but he hasn't been down the front lines because he's not that stupid. So he's when he ascended to the presidency after receiving all the accolades from Angela Merkel and all those crowd, shortly after that he started to change, and he started to be a different person. And then you'll see the Ukrainian stance tightening on tightening up on the behavior or on the eastern part of Ukraine, on the Donbass, on the Luhansk area.
Yeah.
So basically what he did was he continued Poroshenko's plans to kill the people in the Donbass and Luhansk area, the ones who weren't going to be compliant.
Right.
And this is where we are now. So this is a quick snapshot of what has transpired so far. But in the meantime, the neo-Nazis have been gaining in strength because there was Western concern after the Maidan in 2014, and it was hard to deny that because it was the neo-Nazis that had caused the Maidan in Kiev, that so-called color revolution with all those deaths there.
Right.
Now, what the Ukrainians did then was they told the neo-Nazis, look, you want to be involved? Yes, we'll join the army and we'll call you Azov. We'll call you Azov battalion and this battalion, that battalion. And they became part of the army. Now, being part of the army prevents them from being prosecuted or being targeted. And with that, they were able to accelerate their infestation. And the concern is that the current Ukrainian army has got so much infestation of neo-Nazis. It's not just going to be limited to one battalion. There's the IDA battalion, and there's a couple of other groups as well in the Ukrainian army that have been infested by neo-Nazis.
That's what I thought was. There's an old phrase. Here's a picture of the Azov battalion there at Euromaidan, exactly like you're saying. And it shows they were there, and they're fully armed, and they were there at that protest.
Yep.
Neo-Nazis at the protest that made Ukraine independent and democratic, and they were included in the government. So that's definitely there. One of the things that there's just so much to this. So I had always felt, because my grandmother had this phrase, if you see one cockroach, there's a whole lot more. That's the concept. So, they just have a tiny little neo-Nazi military wing that's visible. How much of the problem is not visible? If you're tolerating a military wing that's neo-Nazis, it's probably because there's a much larger group of people that are sympathetic to that group. If you looked at the Irish Republican Army,
Yes.
only about 5% of the population actually participated in the Irish Republican Army during the troubles against England. But 40% of the Irish were sympathetic to them. Although they didn't pick up a gun and shoot British people, they made sure to hide them, give them money, give them arms, give them food so they could keep fighting. We saw also the same thing with ISIS in Iraq. ISIS, not every Iraqi was an ISIS. Of course not. Many of them were just trying to get by. I get it. But in the Sunni province, while ISIS was a small percentage of the Sunnis, there was a much larger percentage that were sympathetic to them. Same thing, weapons, money, housing, etc. And so now I see a neo-Nazi group accepted in Ukraine, and I'm going, and the story is, well, that's just them, and the problem ends there. And I'm going, that's not the way humans work. When you have something that's that exposed, there's a larger body behind it supporting it. That's the way this always goes throughout history.
Absolutely true. And this is where the truth starts to unwind. You start to see the famous saying, "The truth will set you free." Well, you start to see what is really happening. Now, you just be looking to the corruption index. So, where does the Ukraine land up there right now? If you look at the list there,
near Zambia and Eswatini and Gabon. Central African republics, which are super corrupt. Niger, Papua New Guinea, Azerbaijan, Djibouti, Dominican Republic, Kenya, Laos, Togo, Angola. And I just want to point out, so here is Ukraine at 122.
Yep.
And then here is Russia at 136. Yes, Russia is corrupt and technically more corrupt than Ukraine, but not by much. Ukraine's already in a bad neighborhood and is slightly less corrupt than Russia, according to this. So I don't know if they're exactly in a good position to say they're the opposite of Russia with transparency and democratic values. They supposedly broke from Russia in 2014 and started moving to the West. That's over 8 years ago. And after 8 years, they're still one of the most corrupt countries on the earth, close to Russian corruption. Yet they're dedicated to democracy and totally not like the Russians. Some of that story doesn't seem to add up.
Well, this is it, isn't it? This is the interesting thing, where you start to see the 1 + 1 does equal 2. You start to see the BS, and you begin to wonder what is actually happening and who is telling the truth. So. I've got a little picture for you, which I think might be of interest. It is a snapshot of.
Put it in comments, and I can grab it there if it's a URL link, or you can email the picture to me.
I might see if I can put it in the comments thing here.
I'm going to repost out my email just in case you want to send me anything that way. And again, Russia should not have invaded Ukraine. Russia should not have killed Ukrainian civilians. Invading countries militarily is wrong. My problem is we're being lied to.
Yes.
And America and in California, Nazis are horrible and we want nothing to do with them. So that has been a value. I'm 45 years old. That has been a value I've had every single year, and everyone in California shares it. And so when I see us inadvertently backing Nazis, I go, well, that's not a California thing or an American thing to do. And we should not give up our values that we've had since World War II for the cause du jour of the moment. It's just not a good idea. Bill, you can email me here. Real quick, I'm going to start.
I've just seen you.
Okay. Yeah. Let me show you some of the other. While Bill's doing that, I'm going to show you some of the other articles that Bill brought up to my attention. So we'll just go through them real quick. I'm going to do a share screen, and then I'll come back and show the picture Bill has. But first, here we go. So this is the one that shocked me. Bill saw the first episode of Counter Narrative and he goes, "Did you know about this?" And I go, "No." And I'm actively looking for the stuff. And of course, this already happened weeks ago. And I had no idea this happened, even though I'm searching for this and looking for it. If I can just show this, and this gives you a little bit of, so Knesset walkout Zelensky. Zelensky addresses Knesset. Zelensky pleads with Israel. Zelensky criticizes Israel. Zelensky at the Knesset. Knesset. Okay, Zelensky strikes wrong tone with Knesset. There it is. Addresses Israel. Israelis reject Holocaust comparisons. Time Israel. Zelensky. So if you type in the Knesset walkout because of Zelensky's speech, you're not even going to see in the first results what we're talking about. You're going to see, yeah, he spoke at the Knesset and he criticized them for not doing enough. Only 2 out of 15 articles that pop up actually get at the truth, and here it is. Zelensky spoke to the Knesset in Ukraine, in Israel, asking for help, and he said that. Let's see. The address at the Knesset over Zoom, taking comparisons he had already made between his country's situation in World War II to the next level, and dedicated the lion's share of the speech to the Holocaust. The comparison did not have the effect Zelensky apparently had hoped for. This is the Jerusalem Post, out of Jerusalem in Israel. Rather than stir Israel's leaders and legislators to action and solidarity, the heavy Holocaust comparisons, from saying Moscow is planning a full final solution to the Ukrainian question to saying that Israel should save Ukrainians like Ukrainian righteous among the nations save Jews, drew more focus for its audience, which criticized its inappropriateness than Zelensky's appeal for weapons. What they said was Communications Minister Yoaz Handel tweeted genocide was also committed by the Ukrainians, opposite of what Zelensky was telling them. The war is terrible. But the comparison to the horrors of the Holocaust and the final solution is outrageous. They're saying, look, you can't compare what's going on with you to us. I don't care if you're Jewish. This is the Jewish country. That's ridiculous. Secondly, how dare you act like Ukraine was a country that saved Jews? I understand that you lived there and your family went through it, but they also killed 1.2 to 1.6 million Jews. And it is ridiculous for you to act like you guys weren't in on it and didn't love it. And how dare you compare what happened to us in World War II to what's going on with you? That's not alone. Let me see if I can, give me a second here. This computer sometimes, here we go. Israelis reject Zelensky's Holocaust comparison. Same thing. Ukraine, March 21. Never heard of Voice of America. Ukrainian president refers mediation, but the harsh words for the leadership when he addressed Israel was telling us they're not doing enough. In comparing Russia's assault to the Holocaust, the comparison is one many Israelis reject. 9 minutes repeatedly about the Ukrainian leader. He went on to kind of castigate Israel in the comparison of the Holocaust. Comparison of the Holocaust sparked controversy. Let's make the clear differentiation between the Russian invasion, which is deplorable, and apparently a lot of actions taken are apparently beyond the pale of the wrong historical equivalencies that President Zelensky made. Give me 1 second. Every time I'm on a show. Okay. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett took him a more moderate position. Blah, blah, blah. Day after the speech, the Knesset, Zelensky changed his tone dramatically in his nightly video address. He thanked Israel and Pilot for his mediation and said he hopes sooner or later. So Zelensky goes on there and criticizes Israel for not doing enough, says the Holocaust in Ukraine is exactly what Israel went through, and then also said that Ukraine did a great job rescuing the Jews in the Holocaust, and the Israelis are not having it. But again, you're never going to hear any of this. So I had said, I don't care if this guy's Jewish. He's hanging out with neo-Nazis. So clearly, his understanding of neo-Nazis and ours in the West are radically different. I'm sure bad things happen to his family. I'm sure he's, not a fan of the Holocaust, but the way he thinks about that event is different than how we do. And a guy who gets it the way we talk about would not be going to Israel and pissing them off like this. I just saw your picture, Bill. Let me pull that up real quick. Okay. Can you see that, Bill? There should be a graphic. The Azov Battalion.
No, I can't see it.
Okay, here, we'll do it again. Share screen. How about now?
Oh,
Can you see
that? There it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the graphic from Bill. Bill, tell us, what does this mean?
Well, this is the Azov Battalion patch, shoulder patch on the left-hand side. That is the reverse Z or Z with the steel spike through it. Now, if you link to the right, the one on the extreme right-hand side, that is the shoulder patch of the Waffen SS in World War II, 2nd Panzer Division, Das Reich Division, that went through Poland and Ukraine into Russia. So this is the connection. This is where the neo-Nazis in Ukraine get their inspiration from. They actually fought with this division, the Ukrainian neo-Nazis. That's why they've hung on to it, and they wear it quite proudly on their shoulder patch. And there's a breakdown of that swastika wheel as well. So that's paying reference to the original swastika that was used in the German Nazi flag.
The German cult belief of the Nazis in the 1,000-year Reich, represented by the Nazi black sun, and then the emblem of a militant SS division. The Nazi black sun and the double lightning bolt from the SS division have been merged together, as you can see with the Azov Battalion. And what Bill's saying is that basically what they're doing is they're saying, our grandfathers fought with the Nazis back in the day, and we think that's so great. We want to create an homage to them and reference it. It's much like if you were in the airborne and you fought in Afghanistan or Iraq, and your grandfather was in the airborne and fought against, the Nazis or the Japanese in World War II. You're like, well, I'm going to keep this airborne patch because it reminds me of Grandpa and the good fight that he had back in the day, and I want to continue that. They're doing the same thing, except the difference is that when you look at your grandfather in Europe or Russia or America, he fought the Nazis. And so that's a good thing to be connecting yourself to. These guys are saying, my grandfather fought with the Nazis and I want to be connected to it. Total opposite. Am I getting this wrong, Bill?
No, that's exactly correct. And there is also there is quite a bit of shame, unfortunately, on how this is difficult. There's a U.S. reporter, a transgender reporter by the name of Sarah Ashton Cirillo, and he quite blatantly walks around with the Azov Battalion, totally in full support of their aims. And I'll send you the 3 photographs of this person. You can see holding a grenade and a weapon in the left hand. Now, reporters aren't supposed to handle weapons in war zones, because as soon as you do that, you now become a combatant.
An active combatant.
Yes.
Ruth Ashton Taylor. Yeah, send me some photos. I'm trying to find his person.
I'll send you the photographs of this person, and you'll see it got their own accreditation, everything like that, provided by the Ukraine military, and this is the kind of reporting you're getting. And these are people who don't understand the real ramifications of the actions. They think it's all fun and games until the bullets start flying in their direction and hitting them. That's when they start to go, oh, what happened there? They're now in danger. So, let me a second. Yeah, this should be coming your way now. Yeah, there you go. You should get the photographs of this reporter. This is a U.S. person. in full in full agreement with the Nazi ideology.
Got it.
You know, and makes no bones about the fact that she is in full agreement with their ideology.
All right, I just pulled them in. So let me share screen. And Bill, I want to say thanks for helping get the truth out. Here is first photo. So transgender, which, hey, you want to be transgender? I live in California. I love California. Yeah, I love California because even when I don't necessarily agree with people's lifestyle choices, I love that this place accepts everybody. And it, my opinion, doesn't matter. Come as you are, be who you want. We don't want anybody scared of living the life as they want. Now, I personally have a lot of LGBTQ friends and I volunteer for a transgender candidate, but that's what California is. So all about transgender people embracing themselves. I think it's wonderful. But that's not exactly what we're talking about here. Let me show you this. Can you see this one? The press card. I'll come out and then I'll show it again. Let's do a share screen. I'm going to show you all the pictures that Bill sent me. Here's the press card. So here's that person who's transgender. And here they are reporting as a reporter, which, hey, great. You want to be transgender? You want to be a reporter? Awesome. Great. But this is what Bill's talking about. Share screen. There she is. So this is the transgender person holding a weapon, which you can't do as a reporter, and hanging out with neo-Nazis. So that's great. I mean, let's just so that you know, I'm not making this up, you know. Transgender. Yeah.
So that photograph was taken from her Twitter feed.
So she posted on Twitter, "Here I am with a gun and a grenade ready to kill, but I'm a reporter. Reporters are supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to identify them as press so they don't get shot because they're not supposed to be seen as enemy combatants. But when you carry weapons, you're no longer not an enemy combatant." So she's violating the whole point of being a reporter, and she's hanging out with neo-Nazis, and she seems to be very happy about it.
Yep. Now, so, Marcus, I've just sent you another photograph, and this one's quite an interesting one. This is what you call the duplicity of it all, and this is where...
Oh, God.
Yes. You just seen what I've sent you.
I just, you know, after Trump happened, I never thought I'd live to see these days, and here we are. I mean, I remember thinking Nazis are over.
There you go. But look at the flags there. Look at the flags.
That's the Azov battalion right there. That's the Azov battalion. That white part around it is the black Nazi sun flag with the double swastika from the SS division with an official Nazi flag.
And look at the one on the left. The blue flag.
What is that?
That's the NATO flag.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Oh,
the one
God.
the one that Jens Stoltenberg says, NATO, we are full of, diversity. Well, they've got diversity there.
Yeah. And then there's the guy in the beige sweater, and that is a Nazi salute, just so everybody gets it right.
Yes.
It's giving a Nazi salute. They're
Absolutely.
holding the Nazi flag. They're saying the Azov battalion and the Nazis are tied with NATO. So Nazis and NATO.
Yep. Now
What's
you
wrong with
understand.
that?
Yeah, and now you understand. This is where you need to show people and your friends and relatives, this is what is really happening, and you start to question, why should we support this?
I'm against Russia's invasion, but as a brown-skinned man who's a product of miscegenation, my white father and my Mexican mother, I remember reading the Nazis because I was fascinated by history, and I would have been put in the camps and liquidated because I was the product of racial mixing and be dead. So for me, this is existential. I've also met racists, and they're not very happy when they find out that I'm educated, well-spoken, and Latin. So
no, they don't like that at all.
by these people. And, if I showed up and I hung out with the Azov battalion and I said, I'm here to fight Russians, by the way, I'm a half-breed Mexican, would they treat me well? Or
No,
would they not?
they'd kill you because you're not one of them.
Killed for my own ethnicity, but these are good guys.
Oh,
okay.
There's a CNN reporter that's about to find that out the hard way. He was a military analyst. I think his surname is Nance.
I read about that.
He's gone across to Ukraine. Now they'll use him for his PR value because he's good PR value. He has access to the right people, etc. But he's got a target on his back. Did you see any dark-skinned people in the Waffen SS?
Well, let's go to that. So I want to show you a couple more things from the news, and then we're going to get Bill's opinion and your opinion. So you saw that Zelensky pissed off Israel by comparing what's happening in Ukraine to the Holocaust, and by making it seem like Ukraine did not participate in the Holocaust. The Jews of Israel were universally upset about that. We also talked about this week that Greek refugees from Mariupol, so the Greeks, we're talking about how Ukrainian soldiers stomped us and threatened us, and Russian soldiers calmed them down. This is 1 month ago. Greek people saying, hey, in Ukraine, you're saying they're all great, but here's the thing. A lot of people in Ukraine actively tried to beat up and kill Greek people because we weren't the right ethnic group. That's what the Greeks are saying now. And things are so bad that the prime minister or the leader of Greece is actively on his way out. 3 weeks ago, Mitsotakis' popularity plunges as Greeks protest against weapons transfers to Ukraine. So the Greeks are saying, we are so pissed off that our Greek government is backing up the Ukrainians because of their history of supporting Nazis and allowing ethnic persecution against our people recently, that we hate our prime minister for siding with Ukraine, and we're probably going to have him removed. Am I getting this wrong?
You're absolutely correct.
So that's the Jews. That's the Greeks. Not really happy with the neo-Nazi problem there.
No, and they're the smart people. They're the ones who are doing the right thing. They're going after the right people, and they're getting rid of them. So, hooray for them, because this has got to end, and it has got. We've got to get rid of these people, because I'm sorry, they don't need to inhabit this planet. They are the worst. They're the worst of the gene pool. And look, if it means you've got to you're going to do something unusual, well, let's do it and get rid of it, because there's way too much stuff happening that we need to have these people around to add to the malaise.
I'm not for violence or murder, but many times in government, especially in wars, when you go, hey, this group isn't really good for our image, it's not uncommon to arrest people, arrest leaders, ban the group, and banish people from the country. I didn't say beat them up or kill them, but these are things that Zelensky could do today. He could have done yesterday. He could have done any time in the month. The guy just has to go on TV and stuff happens, and yet he can't do that. And now we have the Greeks and the Jews being upset about that, but you're not going to hear about this. And I want to point out, the Greeks are not for Russia. Okay, they're not saying, oh, it's great Russia invaded. What they're saying is, you guys have a neo-Nazi problem, and we don't want to send you weapons because we're afraid we'll get killed.
Yep.
So that's, I think, kind of, and the Jews were like saying, wow, Zelensky, your understanding of the Holocaust and Ukraine's role in it is completely different from ours. There's the Azov battalion with that nice swastika coming from the Das Panzer division. But to get at what you said, I want to talk about this right here. It does not justify it. This is from Yahoo. Again, I never saw this article. It came out this month. Nobody ever brought it up to me. Peace Corps guidance for Black volunteers in Ukraine causes a stir after being exposed on social media. Some corners of social media are in an uproar over the U.S. Peace Corps guidance on handling racism in the Ukraine. Black Peace Corps volunteers who applied were warned to be prepared to be called the N-word and face racism in Ukraine. So, hey, black people in America, do you remember how things were in the 1950s when anybody could walk up to you and call you the N-word right to your face and act hella discriminatory? Well, be ready for that, because if you go to Ukraine, apparently that's how Ukrainians treat black people in general. It's so bad the U.S. Peace Corps had to issue a warning to all the black people who wanted to go to Ukraine and help out. By the way, the Peace Corps is not saying this only happens if you hang out with the Svoboda political party or the Azov militant group. It's saying if you'd go to anywhere in Ukraine, don't be upset when white people call you the N-word right to your face, black people. I didn't make this up. This is the Peace Corps saying it. Here it is, covered by Atlanta Black Star. So personal accounts about the calls for having a thick skin and understanding that the racial discrimination comes from, oh my God, you cannot make this up. So what they're telling is it's not uncommon for Ukrainians to refer to African Americans as the N-word. Volunteers of color may also be called monkey or may see children's games with blackface. Being aware of the history of dehumanization of people African descent may help inform where this comes from. It does not justify it. It will be your discretion to determine the intent. But they're also telling them, hey, just have a thick skin. Yeah, I know that we hate Nazis here and racism here. And you probably, as an African American, pride yourself, being an American, on the fact that America has generally fought against racism and generally, over time, started to push back racist behavior. But hey, if you go to Ukraine and they act hella racist to you like the 1950s in America, don't be upset. Just understand they're not super racist. They just don't have a lot of experience with black people. And hey, black people, when you get called the N-word to your face, you should just have a thick skin. Wow.
That is a real eye-opener, isn't it, Mark?
Wow.
Yeah. I've got to tell you something. Got to tell you something else as well, which a lot of people now. Again, people in the West, like you and me, we are not taught a proper version of history. We learn a tunnel vision version of history, and there is a reason for that, because they do want to. There are reasons to keep us ignorant of what is happening in certain parts of the world. However, again, because of my travels. And I've actually traveled quite a bit through Ukraine and Russia on work and also on as a tourist. I never had any issues personally there at all. But one of the interesting things that I noticed was that, again, this is something that's not known. There's two things that are very important in this conversation here. In the Russians have had integration a heck of a lot longer. In fact, longer than the USA as well, where you had slavery back in the late 1700s. If you look up a particular, and I'll give you this name. If you look this up on Google, you'll be astonished to see the history of this person and the impact he had on the Russian Empire. And look up the name Gannibal, 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 Abram Gannibal. No, this Bal, Bal. There you no Bal, Gannibal. There you are.
Abram Petrovich Gannibal.
Yeah, look him up.
Okay.
See the color.
Oh, Russian military engineer. He's black.
Yes. Look up his history. And see when he was born. 1780. He died in 1781. But he was born.
Wow. 1696.
Yep.
Damn, this guy was old before he died. Russian military engineer, major general, nobleman of sub-Saharan Africa, and kidnapped as a child by Canada, was traded to Russia and presented as gift to Peter the Great, where he was freed, adopted, and raised in the emperor's court household as his godson. So yep. Peter the Great, the Russian, adopted this African child, and apparently the guy rose to great prominence.
Now scroll further down, and you will see his logo, his emblem. Scroll further down, and he married twice, and both of his wives were white. He's the grandfather of Pushkin, the famous Russian poet. There's a
Oh, wow.
portrait. There's a portrait. Okay, there you are.
That's not a Caucasian person.
No. Scroll further down, and you will see there's his relative, his great grandson Pushkin.
Oh, you can see it in the hair.
Yep, you can see it in the hair and the
See it in
face.
the hair. Okay.
So Pushkin
Yeah.
is this famous poet.
Famous.
Hugely important. And if you scroll further down, you will see they should show his crest. There's his logo. There's the crest, the elephant.
From Africa, showing
Yep.
Africa. Okay.
Yep. Now, this man was in the Russian hierarchy back in the late 1600s.
Yes.
They've had color, and they've had people of now. Also, did you notice that that thing under education there? If you scroll further down, no, scroll further down again. There you are. Stop there. See that. See the artist's impression of Gannibal speaking with Alexander Suvorov. If you click on Suvorov, okay, Suvorov attained the rank of generalissimo. He was one of the greatest generals of all time, and he was inspired by Gannibal. This man has got so many orders. He walks with his head bowed forward.
Oh, yeah. Here's all the ribbons. You can see he's done a lot of stuff militarily.
He is the only general who defeated 3 of Napoleon's generals.
Really?
Yes, he's the only one. He did that feat, amazing feat. He was also pivotal in the Russians defeating the Ottomans in what is known as modern-day Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula. If I remember my numbers correctly, he fought around almost 30 major battles and never lost a single one. So Gannibal was huge. Gannibal was a neighbor. He spoke to Suvorov's father and inspired the young man to go into the military because Suvorov wanted to. And this is the impact Gannibal had at that age there.
So this great Russian general who helped defend the Russians against Napoleon was only there because Gannibal, the African guy, told him.
So there's the color extension there, and you look at these battles against the Ottoman Empire, Polish uprising, all that, huge success. Now, just a little insight into something very interesting. I was surprised that there has never been a military vessel of any sort named after Suvorov. But there is an order of Suvorov. It's one of the highest awards given. It's purely for military people only, and you have to be of exceptional achievement to receive that order of Suvorov. And it's still presented to this date. But the Russians have actually just named one of their latest submarines after Suvorov. That was a surprise.
He also, and this is what they said about George Washington.
Yes.
While on campaign, he slept on straw and contented himself with the humblest fare.
Yep.
Ate with his troops, took good care of the army supplies and living conditions, reducing cases of illness amongst the soldiers dramatically and earning their loyalty and affection without getting too distracted. That's a sign of a good general.
Yes, and this actually goes to the way the Russian army fights as well in World War II and right now. You notice that there's been several Russian generals who have been killed in the field, and that's because they are actually in the front lines with their troops. They follow this dictum of Suvorov. So whereas most of the Western armies, you'll see the general safely ensconced in a tent, command tent elsewhere. So like Patton in the U.S. Army in World War II, they lead from the front. They are on the front lines with their troops.
Yeah.
And this is so. Just going back to what we were talking about, the Russians have had integration since it. And what I also noticed in my travels was something remarkable. The Soviet Union part also played a great uh, understanding of the different nationalities, remembering that the Soviet Union covered 10 time zones. So you had people of Asiatic uh, skin tone and look, right down to right up to Caucasian look, and then the blonde hair and blue eyes. So
Yeah.
there was a great intermix that happened. Now in Ukraine, that intermix was destroyed by the neo Nazis coming out, and they've actually caused these divisions. They've actually caused marked divisions to occur. Uh, where you'd also have during the Soviet era, after uh, Stalin's experience with religion in World War II, the, the Soviet Union created what was called harmony squares in major cities, where you'd have the mosque, the Jewish synagogue, the Orthodox Church, and you'll have the Catholic Church, all located in one square. Now that has also been changed as well. That has also been destroyed by the neo Nazis as well.
Here's a little bit building more on this. Again, nothing. So here's another Times of Israel article going, Ukraine's divided over the legacy of Nazi fighters. They didn't say, oh, there's a 2% section that's into this, but nobody else is really into it. Here's the Times of Israel going, that country's split on how to feel about Nazis.
This is 2013.
Yeah,
it is
2013. Not that long ago.
Not that long ago. However, once you go past 2014, you see the integration of these Nazi units into the official Ukrainian army. Now, the saddest part has been is that the militaries of the USA, Canada, the UK have known about these units being part of the Ukrainian army. And what is even sadder is that you have the USA US Army, or the US military, the Canadian military, and the the UK military training people from these units in full knowledge that they are Nazis. So the question has to be asked: why have they done this? And that's a real head scratcher.
I want to point out two things. This is what I was talking about, how Zelensky might be Jewish, but he does not understand the Holocaust like we do in the West. The Ukrainians dressed in Nazi SS uniforms trudged through trenches and fired model rifles in a reconstruction of a key battle against the Soviets during World War II. An Orthodox priest leads I thought that was Jewish. Never mind. Let's go to here. One of Yarmouk's fellow SS Galician veterans is Michael Karkok, a Minnesota man shown in an Associated Press investigation to have commanded a Nazi-led unit accused of atrocities. The annual commemoration of the Galician gave an insight into the complex reaction of the Kharkov revelations have produced in Ukraine, in contrast to the near universal outrage they have stirred up in Poland, Germany, and the United States. So the Times of Israel is saying, here's this super Nazi called Michael Karkok, and in Poland, Germany, and America, they think he's horrible. But in the Ukraine, there's a complex reaction, meaning they don't just say he's horrible. They have divided opinions over these guys. That's now this is the year before they went to the West. Maybe they did some reform, but maybe they didn't. I do want to cover this real quick.
Yep.
So we talked about how African Americans were told, just be cool with being called an N directly to your face if you go to Ukraine. And the advice from the U.S. Peace Corps, which is funded by the U.S. government, is to, quotes, have a thick skin about it. Just get over it.
Yes.
Here's another thing going on in Ukraine. According to data, about 16,000 international college students in Ukraine in 2020 were from Africa. Even though the students contribute millions of dollars to the country's economy through their pursuit of higher education, many reported being shunned by Ukrainian officials in favor of the host nation's women and children when they tried to leave the country amid attacks In February, Africans were barred access to buses and other forms of transportation to the border and stranded in the cold as nationals followed a Ukrainian first policy. Even when Africans made it to the borders at times from traveling miles on foot, they were often turned back by Polish or Romanian guards. A new report shows many Black people fleeing Ukraine are held in prison-like facilities across Europe. Let's not end there. Black Ukraine refugees allege discrimination while trying to escape the Russian invasion, March 12th. This is on CBS News. And here you go. Humiliating crisis in Ukraine has put a spotlight on alleged racism. So 16,000 Black people are saying they're being discriminated against, but it's still alleged that there's racism there. Yeah, it makes sense. The concern, immigrants from Africa and other people of color who call Ukraine home. All people of color who call Ukraine home. Big problem. There are accusations of discrimination against these refugees. The NAACP has gotten involved, asking for better treatment. One student from Ghana described what she saw and experienced. Mostly they would consider white people first, Indian people, Arabic people before Black people. And another student we went to the train station and they let us in. And when they did let us in, they were like, you give us money because this is not free for you because you're foreign. This is not free for you. So let's see. On social media, some wrote this off as Russian propaganda, but then it turned out to be completely true. So we have the Jews upset at Zelensky for downplaying the Ukrainian role in the Holocaust and for comparing genocide like they had it to Ukraine. We have the Greeks not wanting to participate with Ukraine and actively seeking the removal of their government because they've worked with Ukraine while not being aware of the neo-Nazis Zelensky hangs out with. And now we have reporting of 16,000 people who happen to have Black skin being treated like second-class citizens in Ukraine as they try to leave under a regime that basically said, if you're not white, you're not getting anything. But I'm supposed to believe that despite all of this, the Azov Brigade and the Svoboda political party are tiny. Nobody really supports them, and it's a small issue. Yet Israel, Greece, and Africans don't seem to think that. And neither does the Peace Corps. They seem to think there's a larger white supremacist problem in the country. And again, all these articles, I didn't know they existed until a few days ago after I did the first issue of Counter Narrative, and other people said, you're missing stuff.
I've just sent you something, Marcus. This is a little parting or little gift for you. And this is quite sad, actually, when you see this.
I'm going to get that in a second. El Scorpio Perfecto, since you are for inclusive independent California, do you fear these guys could disrupt the movement of CalExit? The Azov Brigade in Ukraine? No, they're not coming over here. And let's get the record straight. I don't care what people say. If you showed up in California wearing a Nazi emblem or saying I'm a Nazi, you'd find out how we really think about that real quick. And I can promise you, there would never be somebody even able to run for office, let alone get into Sacramento, having any association with the Nazis. And there would never be a group of Nazis that are officially part of any law enforcement, military establishment in California. And we would never have 30 cities with statues dedicated to how cool the Holocaust is in California. Now, Californians may be ignorant of this stuff. They may be saying I'm wrong bringing it up. But if that was actually in their face, I know exactly how it'd go. And it'd be the total opposite of what's going on in Ukraine. I'm not sure if that's what you meant. Let's go to Bill's picture real quick. Let me pull this up. Oh, this does my heart good, Bill.
Yes, I thought you'd be intrigued.
Yeah, I just, it's heartwarming.
Yeah. I was going to tell you something else. If neo-Nazis showed up in California or near the border, I think they'll end up experiencing what they call the Colombian necktie.
We would not handle it well. I don't support violence or murder. I'm just saying people viewed Donald Trump as a neo-Nazi. He never even said he was a Nazi. He never even claimed allegiance to the Nazis. He never even said the Holocaust was good. But people still thought he was bad enough and close enough to the Nazis, even though he didn't even do a fraction of what the Azov Brigade of the Svoboda political party did. Things were so bad. When Trump came to California, we were the only place in all of America to shut down the entire transportation grid so that the presidential caravan had to stop a few blocks out, and he literally had to walk across the freeway tarmac to get to his destination. That has never happened in America to any American president in history. And we were the only place in America to actually do that to Trump. So, and that guy never even said, I'm a Nazi. I love the Nazis. It was a good time. The Holocaust is cool. Yeah. People may have thought he thought that. And that's how we reacted to him. So I can only wonder if these people actually came over here, the warm reception that they would get from Californians. Again, not endorsing violence at all. I'm just saying, here's a picture from Bill. Here's a Canadian. That's the Canadian flag. And then these are neo-Nazis.
Well, they're Ukrainian soldiers, but I think if you look at the shoulder patch on the one who's got his head turned away, you'll see the patch. It's not clearly evident, but the one holding the third one in the middle, you'll see the patch there.
Right. Okay, I see it. Yeah.
Yep. So you can start to see the patch there. It's very difficult to make out at the moment, but you can see.
Yeah, both of them have the patch on. You can barely see it, but it's there.
Yep.
And then here's a Canadian.
There's a Canadian soldier training them.
Yeah.
Obviously, special forces is training them. So this is the sad complicity that we've got to. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, especially because Canada, during the entire time that Trump was around, was saying Trump's bad for immigration, he's bad for diversity. We in Canada are offended by the things Trump says and does because we're having all these immigrants come in, which is great. And we're trying to move to a more diverse society, which is great. So they spent a couple of years going, we hate racism and discrimination, and we're all for diversity, and that's what's wrong with Trump. To then have that government who said that a year and a half later say, let's send our troops trained by taxpayers, paid for by taxpayers, equipped by taxpayers to go help neo-Nazis. How do you do that? I mean, how do you spend years criticizing discrimination and racism, and then in a year and a half later go, oh yeah, let's totally help some neo-Nazis become even more deadly and dangerous? How do you do that? I mean, what goes through your mind?
It's incredible to try and reconcile it because I can't rationalize it. I cannot. It just does not equal to anything. You know, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's weird. I think one of your contributors, Antifa Action, has said something.
Oh, we'll show that.
Yeah, quite profound.
Yeah. What's your take on that? And then I'll give my take, Bill.
It's an interesting comment from someone who's got the anti-fascist action, and yeah, look, the Russians will clean up the shop down there. They will do that because that's their set goal, and they know if they don't do it, there'll always be recurring pockets amongst there, and there'll be a festering wound up there. So they have to lance it. They have to lance it completely, or if not, then cut it off.
I again am not for Putin's invasion of the Ukraine or for killing civilians, and I also don't think that invading a country to get rid of neo-Nazis is the right way to do it. However, so I don't think the Russians should go in and destroy them, but I do think the Ukrainians should. I think the Ukrainians should have outed these people and had nothing to do with them, and should be actively seeking to banish them, imprison them, destroy their reputation, remove them from power, which they're not. This is Ukraine's problem. Ukraine needs to step up and fix this problem so that it's permanently fixed. There was a people called the Germans, and they committed the Holocaust against the Jews. But if you go to Israel and you talk to Jews now about the country that is most aware of the Holocaust and how bad it was, It's the Germans.
Yeah.
The Jews say that because the Germans did this thing of apologizing and teaching their children, we screwed up. Like we really screwed up and we can't screw up like that again. You talk to anybody from Germany, they get it because they had a long period of going, this is a problem. We kind of tolerate it for a long time. It's a part of our culture that we have to collectively as a community kill off. And the way that you do that is educating the youth, educating your public, and sticking to the message. Ukraine needs to have that now.
Yeah, it's very much like what happened in South Africa, where they managed to get past the they had a truth and reconciliation, and now you see South African sporting teams which have got coloreds, black and white, all playing together regardless, and they're all very close. I think the first team to do that was their rugby union team, and that was a huge message. And in fact, the current captain is a Black African man, and he's so highly regarded. Yep.
Great.
Yeah. So this is it. But unfortunately, at this point in time, we are still at the 1940s stage for Ukraine, and there's going to be the reconciliation has to come from them, and how long it will take, that is another question.
I'm not excusing what Russia did. I am pointing out there is some truth to Russia saying it is a huge problem, and we in the West are being lied to that there's nothing to this problem. I've done 2 shows now where I cover a lot of news that I just never heard of and nobody else knows about, and that shouldn't happen. I should not be informing people of the news. Americans should already be having a conversation, and it should go something like this. Russia shouldn't invade Ukraine. Russia shouldn't have killed those civilians. That's bad. But yeah, Ukraine does have a neo-Nazi problem. And if they're really going to become a democracy and really part of the West, you've got to clean that up now. Because you don't get to hang out with us with that kind of attitude. Not Marcus, a Western thing we do.
Marcus, one more thing. I suppose one way to also express it is that if you were living in the eastern part of Ukraine and you were living 24/7 under the guns, where if you went to work or if you walked along the road or if you were at home or if your children were at school, you were in danger of being hit by high velocity shells or being killed by a sniper. And that's what the Ukrainians in the eastern part were facing since 2014. So this has been a build-up over 7-8 years to a point where it cannot be taken anymore. And particularly, if you read into what happened just before Zelensky became president, Poroshenko had massed the armies there, and they were going to have an all-out battle, and it was due to take place in March 2022, where they were going to wipe out the people there. So they were going to kill their own countrymen.
And that's why Putin invaded around that
Exactly time. Right. Yeah, exactly right. Again, as I said, I've traveled to the region, and there's actually speaking to about the living conditions and the way the people were existing. There's actually a very good video clip, and I'll send you the link to this one, where you can actually look at it yourself, because the video clip is it's roughly about 50 minutes, but the particular section I'm talking about is only about 5 minutes, and that encapsulates the living and working conditions and the lifestyle conditions for the people in the East. The man who did this, he is a British traveler, and it just tells everything.
Patrick Lancaster?
No, it's not. He goes as bored and bankrupt, and he's actually of Polish extraction, but he's born in the UK, and he speaks Polish and Russian, so he can travel to the region quite easily. And he's traveled through many of those countries, and he doesn't color things, he just stays as they are, and he showed the living conditions. And he goes right up to the Russian border, the Ukrainian-Russian border, and he shows the living conditions of the people, and he just says, "Wow." He says, "Not what we in the West have." He said, "These people have no real future. They have no sewage system. They have no basic lifestyle systems. Their transport system is third world." And it gives you a stark reminder of where Ukraine is now, and why there is a reaction and question to the basically, where has all the money gone? That's the question many people are asking. All the donations made to Ukraine, all the billions of dollars that were made before this conflict, where has it all gone?
That's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. So
Exactly right. Yeah.
where do you think it went? Yeah. Send me the video. I do, and I'm going to do another episode of Counter Narrative, not tonight, but I will have you back on. Bill, could I ask you to email me? I'd like to stay in touch with you with email. I'm going to type my email again. Just send me an email so I have your info and I can contact you, because I'm going to do another episode of Counter Narrative. Not today. There it is, marcus.ruiz.evans@gmail. Yep. And one of the in the next episode of Counter Narrative, because I'm getting my research together, I was going to talk about how the United Nations has said that atrocities occurred on both sides. They did not say just Russia. They said the Ukrainians have killed civilians and the Russians have killed civilians. They said both. That was the UN. So the UN has a different story than what American media and Western media is portraying. And they said, it's pretty bad on both sides. Both you guys are doing wrong. But here's the thing. There was this thing called the Iraq War. And when America went into there, they put the Shia ethnic group in charge. And the Shia had militias. And they were slaughtering the Sunni ethnic group. In fact, the Sunnis were being slaughtered in such high numbers by the Shia that the country called Saudi Arabia, the king at that time, ordered someone called the Vice President of America, Dick Cheney, to come to his country. And what he told him was, you cannot just let an ethnic group that's tied to us get slaughtered right on our border. We're not going to watch it. So you're either going to go in there and start working with these Sunni tribes, or we're going to start arming them. The Saudi king told Dick Cheney that. And you know what happened a few weeks later? The Anbar Awakening, where the U.S. military started working with the Sunnis, because they knew they couldn't ask a country to watch their fellow ethnic people get slaughtered right on their border. Let's take another example. There was a country called Serbia.
Yes.
And they shelled a country called Kosovo. And the entire world said, well, Serbia, maybe Kosovo was historically part of your country going back to the medieval ages, but when you start killing off your people, you really don't have a right to them being in your country. There was also a guy called Saddam Hussein, and he started shelling and trying to kill a group called the Kurds in the north. And America, again, just like they did with Serbia, said, when you start trying to kill your own people, you no longer have authority for them. America also made that statement on a third time with a country called South Sudan. It used to be part of a country called Sudan. America decided, along with the world, that when the North Sudanese, who are mostly Arab and Muslim, started attacking the Fur people in the south, who are mostly animist and African, that they no longer had the right to control them. And so they split it into South Sudan. So America said, if you attack your own ethnic people in your own country, you no longer have a right to rule over them. Said that to Serbia, said that to Iraq, said that to North Sudan, and listened to the message with the Saudis. And yet we're supposed to believe that when Russia watches ethnic Russians on its border get killed, it's cool and it shouldn't do anything about it. Is that fair?
Interesting.
I mean, America did this 4 times in a row. But when Russia does it once, well, that's a problem.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Why'd you do it 3 times in a row then? I mean, you're setting an international precedent. And then when the Russians follow it, they're bad people for doing that. How does that make sense? Anyways, let's see the video, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, just sending you the link. There's a timestamp 14:12, 14 minutes 12 seconds onwards. So if you start from there, this
Okay.
I'm sure this gentleman wouldn't mind this video being shown, because it's a stark reminder of what uh, the living conditions are for the people in that part of the world. Now, this is one day before invasion. So if you go to 14:12 onwards, he's on board a bus, and then you go to the point where he steps off the bus, and he shows you the living conditions.
Let me see if I can cue this up right now. Okay, we got something going on.
You jacked? No.
Hold on a second. I got to get the commercials out of the way a second, then I'll show it.
Yep.
Okay, and then 14:12.
So if you go to 14:12, he boards a bus. But if you want to skip that part, you can fast forward to the point where he
mean, the Borisivkans. 1177.
Bill, can you see the video?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're there about 14:20. This is the Donbass region.
No. This is just outside Kharkiv. Yeah. So
this is just outside of Kharkiv in Ukraine.
Yep. So this is how they travel. This is the bus. This is their transport service.
Okay, so this is Ukraine outside of Russia control, and this was taken in February last month. All right, let's take a look.
I'm talking to everyone on the bus, the people around me, and they're all saying the same thing, and that is that this is the 21st century. How can we still be suffering like this? How can we still be suffering like this in the 21st century? Yeah, it's incredible. What an absolute great part of the world. Check it out. Just old rotting Soviet infrastructure, muddy roads. Crikey, there must be really stoic people in this part of the world. Wow.
Those are dirt roads.
It gets more interesting now, Marcus.
Okay, we are looking at Kharkiv,
outside Kharkiv.
Russian sphere of influence in Ukraine-controlled territory in February.
An army block post further up the road, and I'd rather avoid anything to do with the army or police. But anyway, look over here in this field. This is the Ukrainian-Russian border. Can you pick out the barbed wire all the way along? Can you see it? It's probably the most contentious border in the entire world at the moment. It's kind of underwhelming being here. You know, it's on the news all the time. You expect kind of tanks to be lined up. Vladimir Putin himself. But when you come here, you see it's just a field. But just across there is Russia. Wow. Let's go into that village, see if we can't meet someone.
Look at the roads here now.
Yeah, they're just rubble.
Look at the road.
And this was not a town that was attacked. This is just the way it was.
Yes, correct.
Just see some dogs and chickens.
And this is an Englishman from Britain, and he's there visiting. So he's not Ukrainian, he's not Russian. He's just there to understand what's going on.
Yep.
And he's going, wow, this place looks not very good. And this is the Ukraine independent of Russia. Where are the roads? Where are the infrastructure? This place has been Western for years. Why does it look like this?
Have a look at the cost. Yeah.
Я не хотел мешать, просто я прибыл из Англии, корреспондент. Просто хотел знать, как жизнь на границе с Россией, если все спокойно или нет. Ну, все спокойно, я
Все
думаю.
спокойно,
Да?
спокойно, да, все отлично.
А вы не боятся, что то, что что-то будет? Ну, оккупация или что-то?
Мы не думаем, может, мы не думаем.
Нет, нет. А деревне все нормально?
Пока нормально, все,
Да?
все нормально.
Вы не боитесь, вы настоящий украинский мужчина тогда. Спасибо.
Мы граждан Украины, так что у нас пока все нормально.
Да?
Дай Бог, да.
А если что-то будет, что вы будете делать? Переехать где-то или что ваш план? Или вы не думали даже?
Я не думаю, куда-то ехать.
Нет?
Зачем дом бросать или не, я не думаю.
Понятно. Но вы патриот?
Отец.
Хорошо. Очень приятно. Спасибо вам большое. До свидания.
Look at that house.
Yeah,
My God, we're lucky living. Well,
That's-
if you live in
that's
Western
just a
country
shack.
like I do.
Yeah.
Just think about the people here on this village. In this village, they've got to contend with a lack of prospects, a lack of jobs, a lack of wages, a lack of healthcare, lack of future. And on top of that, just there, across that barbed wire, they've got the threat of a possible invasion. Be grateful for what you've got.
wow. I mean,
thought
it,
you'd-
it-
yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I thought you'd enjoy. You'd not enjoy. I thought it'd be appropriate to show that because it really is a stark reminder as to how fortunate we are in the West.
True. But part of the reason that we're fortunate in the West is that we had a series of rules and laws and order and a concept of rights that goes back to the Enlightenment era and the Renaissance era, and then certainly the 1800s with the introduction of English law and the fight of Europe and America against slavery throughout the 1800s. And I'm wondering when I look at Ukraine and I see massive corruption
Mhm.
and massive racism against Black people and racism against Greek people and a lack of understanding of the Holocaust to the Jews as the rest of the world has it, and a lack of understanding of when you hang out with neo-Nazis, how the rest of the world sees that. And I'm wondering if these people have the Western values or philosophy that it takes to become a prosperous Western nation. I mean, they tried to drop a Western government in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it didn't hold because those people didn't have Western values like, I know you're part of a separate ethnic group, but I don't shoot you in the face because I lost an election. Well, it's kind of hard to build something
Yeah.
if they don't have these basic concepts that go back 200-300 years in Europe and America to the Enlightenment and the Renaissance. And so I understand we are fortunate, but also our fortunate was not luck. There were principles that we built Western society on that allowed us to succeed. And looking at the stuff you've showed me and we've seen today, I wonder if Ukraine has those principles and if maybe that has some indication of why they're still where they're at.
Exactly correct. Yes. I mean, look, no one wants to talk about it like that, but that is the truth. And this is why countries like, if you want to, another way to understand it is, you have to understand how even Serbia has changed from what happened under Milosevic. It has changed.
Right.
It's a far more tolerant country now. Hungary is has evolved. Now, Hungary and Serbia on the border with Ukraine, along with Romania as well. Romania is still a bit of a wild country in certain parts as well. But overall, Hungary and Serbia have changed so much. Now, if they can have rules based in those countries, there's nothing to stop Ukraine from having it. The thing is there the desire? And that is the question. So until that desire is queued up and takes place, one thing I'll make unsolicited is that my take on the thing is at the moment is that what will happen is the Russians will go up to the Dnieper River. They may or may not go into Kiev. That's a bit of a question mark, even though Kiev is such a special city in their heart, because during the time of the expelling of the Ottomans, Kiev became the focus of rejuvenating the Orthodox Christianity religion.
Right.
That's why
Right.
it's so special to them.
Right.
And what will happen is that Western Ukraine will, and this is the question, interesting question mark, it could actually become part of Poland. because it once was part of Poland until 1949. It was Galicia, as you know it, and that's why the name Galicia popped up in that article you were showing. So, and if it does become part of Poland, the Polish people won't like the neo-Nazis, and they will get rid of them. The other thing also that's interesting is that the majority of Western Ukrainian people are Catholic. So it could be the convenient solution. So what would happen in Ukraine is that it could experience a rules-based order. I'll send you one more picture which will explain what I'm saying. It's an expanded map. It shows how the current Ukraine became to be created, because Ukraine is actually basically 4 territories that were jammed together, and it was never really a country on its own. There's actually 3 territories jammed together, with the 4th one coming in as a payoff for having supported a certain person becoming the Russian General Secretary. We're talking about Mr. Khrushchev, of course.
Well, one more link, and then I gotta go. My mom wants me to eat something before. Sorry.
You and me too. Yes.
Yeah, I got, I'm a badass on the world stage, except when mommy calls, and then I'm suddenly like, oh, what do you want? So, while you're queuing that up, email me that link. I'll show it. While you're queuing that up, I do want to show this one last thing here, because I think this is informative for a lot of people. So, this is Live UA map. It's a map that international reporters make. Basically, all they do is they take tweets from any reporter around the world and they just geolocate it. So here's a reporter saying, here's these missiles going off. This is Ukraine. Here's Russia. This is the part of, it's a little bit hard to see that. This is the part of Ukraine that is now under Russian control in pink. Here's the Donbass with the red air, and here's the pink. So take a look at that. All right. So see, this is Ukraine, and they've kind of conquered this part. Now they came into Kiev, and they were defeated there, or they didn't conquer Kiev, however you want to interpret that. Now the West has been saying, see, they've been totally defeated, but that's not exactly true. They've captured a huge swath in the south, almost completely cutting off Ukraine from any access to the ocean. They only have this little bit left here. Now I want to show you this map from the 2010 election. This was the one that really started splitting Ukraine into the West and the East. So when people say Ukraine wanted to go to the West and not the East, that's not exactly true. The Western portion of Ukraine wanted to join the West, and the Eastern portion of the Ukraine was quite content with their relationship with Russia. This is the election. As we can see here in the Donbass region, they had about 91% voting for the Russian-backed guy, 90%, 70%, 70%, 60%, 67%, 66%, 51%. Crimea is about 68%. That's for the Russian-backed guy. And then you cross right over here, and it's the total opposite for the other guy. And if we look at Russian language or Russian people, there's another one with the same election. So this is most of the area that Putin has already conquered. He's conquered almost half of this area in blue. The West is not talking about that. They're talking about how he lost in Ukraine. Maybe that's true. What they're not mentioning is he's captured a huge amount, almost half of the area that's largely Russian, speaks Russian, and voted for Russian-backed people. Something, again, you're probably not going to see in the news. Let's take a look.
Just send you the link.
Got it. Ukraine. All right. Here's our last thing, and we're going to both of us go see our moms, and it'll be great. Share screen. Territorial map of Ukraine.
Yeah. Now this is a historical makeup, and you can see if you start from the top left, from the right, from 1654, 1683, 1795, 1940, 1945, and then you have the last bit jammed together by Mr. Khrushchev in 1954. But look at what Stalin did. He took advantage in World War II. He captured that bit there. So the Romanians paid a price because they supported the Nazis, and the Hungarians also paid a price because they also had complicity with the Nazis as well. But both the Romanians and Hungarians have changed their ways. And you can see how Ukraine was created. So it was never really a country of its own. There was only one spot, where 1654, 1683, and that was until 1795. That bit lasted until the Polish Empire took over.
So the Ukraine is really the section in orange and yellow. If we're looking at modern nations, they kind of go off, were you roughly that in the medieval times? So it looks like Ukraine, yeah, the orange and yellows, the real Ukraine, that's the country. But we're going back into the 1900s, which is modern era.
Yes.
And Lenin gave them the huge amount of land that they're saying is all theirs that Russia has recently conquered. And Khrushchev gave them the Crimean Peninsula that they're saying that they're on. And then Stalin gave them the western sections as the war. So the eastern half of Ukraine wasn't even Ukrainian until like 1920 or 1950. And it was because of a gift from the Russians to them. But they're saying that's all ours now. And this backs up what, unfortunately, Putin was saying about, we gave a lot to these people and it shouldn't have just been given without any repercussion. I mean, Vladimir Lenin conquered a lot or gave them this huge section of territories you can see in the lime green in the south. Khrushchev gave them Crimea. And if we compare that to this map, one second. This is damn close to what Lenin gave Ukraine. This area conquered by Russia now is really close to the exact boundaries that Lenin gave them in 1920. They didn't ask for, it wasn't originally part of them. It was given to them by Lenin, Crimea by Khrushchev, and Putin has almost reconquered all of that land that was given to them by the Russians. Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until
I thought you'd be intrigued by that map because it is an eye opener. It gets people to understand what is real and what is fake, and you start to then say, well, that man in Moscow, he may not be blowing sunshine up my nose. He's not smoking the weed. He's saying the truth. He's got some real things, and this is where you have to be very careful about who is gaslighting whom. Now, look, I'll put it in this way, Marcus. I follow a very simple adage where it's taken from the film Red October, where the president's advisor on security, Jeffrey Pelt, says, I'm a politician.
Right.
I'm a liar, which makes me a liar and a thief. Yeah. And when I'm not kissing babies, I'm stealing their lollipops.
Yes.
So that you have to keep that in mind when you look at all of these people talking about these things.
Well, right off the bat, I can tell you right now, the Western media is saying Russia was militarily defeated and all of their goals were basically shut down. This map shows that's not true. What this map is showing is that if you look at the lime green section that was given by Lenin to Ukraine, and you look at the purple Crimea that was given by Khrushchev to Ukraine, Vladimir Putin has already conquered all of that area up to about 85-90%. The only part that he hasn't conquered out of that lime green section and the purple section is right around Odessa.
Correct.
So he has achieved 90% recapture of the traditional lands that Russia gave them. You will not hear that anywhere in the West.
also what will happen is, what is also little known is, just west of Odessa is Moldova, and in Moldova there is a Russian enclave there.
Yeah.
Okay, now that Russian enclave will be part of this. Will be joined up with. So they will go all the way to the Russian enclave, and they will have achieved those aims, and Ukraine will be a landlocked country. End of story.
There's what he's talking about. Here's Moldova.
Yep.
As you see, there's this red strip next to Moldova that is Transnistria,
Yes,
which is
correct.
full of Russians.
Yep.
And the pink is the Russian area controlled, and all that's sitting between them is Odessa. So as
Yep.
you can, I mean, literally, if we zoom in, Transnistria with Russians, Russian control in dark pink, Transnistria, Russian people in light pink. You can literally see the amount of land left between joining up that Russian population with where the Russian military has already gone, and it's Odessa. And the moment that happens, Ukraine will be completely cut off from the Black Sea. And Odessa is where I believe 80% of a lot of Ukrainian goods are shipped out of the country and to markets. If Russia controls that, they will cut off Ukraine from sea shipments, which will permanently hinder their economy, in addition to basically creating a buffer. So as you look, here's Ukraine. They'll have one side controlled by Russia, another side controlled by Russia, and another side controlled by Russia, basically pinned in with Russians on all sides,
Yep.
as you can see here. And you're not going to see this in the West, but that area in pink is largely what Lenin gave to Ukraine and Khrushchev, and Putin has already almost conquered or reconquered the whole thing.
That's correct. So this is the reality, the real situation, and I hope more people that see it will understand where things are. As you see now, the pink area is actually getting close to Kharkov, and
Yeah.
once Kharkiv is the financial capital of Ukraine.
Oh,
So it's like taking over New York.
oh,
Yes. So once Kharkiv is taken over, you can their financial system, you can kiss that goodbye, and then yep. Now they just they roll down the road, and they'll go up to the Dnieper River. And Marcus, just quickly, do you remember earlier in the conflict, like last month, there was this curious 40-mile long column?
Yes. Yeah.
What did you think it was about?
Well, let me show everybody what you're talking about, so we can take a look back in time to when Russia was sieging Kiev. There you go. So now you can see. So what I did was I just this allows you to go back in time. So now I looked back to 2 months ago. You can see Putin hasn't completed controlling the south, but he has achieving his war aims. Here's the section here. The Bill's talking about. There was a column in this pink area coming from the Belarusian border, right here, this thing.
Yep.
Where they're coming from Belarusia into Ukraine to try to seize Kiev or Kyiv.
Stop there for a moment. Stop that map. You notice how many assets in red there are. That is the Ukrainian assets that were there. I heard Colonel Douglas McGregor make a wonderful assessment, and he's a tactician, and he said the Russians have just demonstrated what modern warfare is all about. He said, this is what you call a distraction. That column didn't go anywhere. It just stayed there, and people were speculating that it's run out of ammunition, it's run out of food, it's stuck in the mud, it's run out of fuel. But no, they just stayed there. I mean, look what happened to the assets, all drawn in there.
Yep.
And meanwhile, what was happening down in the southeast?
There you go.
Yep. Look at what happened in the southeast. They absolutely, if this is military tactics. Look at all the scattered assets there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so they don't have full control of the south, as you can see here.
Yeah.
This is March.
Yeah.
Mid-March.
And what they did was they tied up all those assets north of Kiev. Everyone was focused there, and down in the south, they were able to make their gains until they decided to retreat. They said, "Okay, we've done the smoke and mirrors routine. We'll just retreat back." And the Russians are like, "Yeah, you want to say you had a victory? Fine, you can say what you have a victory." And what happened then? The assets were repurposed. They come round the other side, and they start to really hammer in the east. I'm not trying to glorify this, but what I'm trying to do is draw attention to what was happening there. And this is what you call military tactics. And unfortunately, again, the Western armed forces, not everyone realized what was going on. And they suddenly, when they suddenly saw the swing around, they're like, "Whoa, why are they retreating?"
Because the Russians retreated very quickly. That was one thing that I saw in the newspaper, was they were saying these guys were beaten and, it really didn't work out, and look at the humiliating defeat. Or one of my favorites is when they go, the Ukrainian forces beat them back. That's not what happened.
No.
The Russians may have been stalled at Ukraine, or maybe they stopped at Ukraine, but they withdrew. They were not beaten back. They withdrew, and they withdrew in record time. Like in 2 days, they went from full-scale invasion to we're all the way out. It took America 3 to 6 months to move that many people out of Afghanistan and Iraq. The Russians basically did a smaller fraction, but thousands of troops and tanks in 2 days. It was a huge mobilization. Excellently carried out.
Yeah, and look what they did. They go back, and then they go right round.
Yep.
And they reposition all their forces. And we're talking about, you're talking about 10 to 15 divisions. You're talking like, 100 to 100,000, 150,000 troops.
Yeah, and they just quickly moved them out in a few days.
Yep. I just thought I'd bring that to your attention, because that was something that's been on my mind for a while too, because again, there's been a lot of smoke and there's been a lot of gaslighting by the Western media.
Yeah.
If they were that defeated, how could they swing around to the south and then start to make themselves felt in the southeast? But the interesting thing is, by doing that move, they have still tied up Ukrainian assets in Kiev, because it's a question of, will they come back or not?
And here's the Russian army moving out.
Yep.
Very quickly. Mm-hmm. And this was, here you go. So they're outside of Ukraine. And this is what Bill's talking about, was they pulled out of Ukraine, and then they were spotted in Belarus and then going into Russia. And basically they pulled out of the north, went back into Belarusia, went through Russia, and then popped out back again in the south, where they've conquered 90% of the territory Lenin gave them. They've also brought down Mariupol, which was a huge stronghold. They basically completely conquered Mariupol. And the only thing they have left to link up everything is Odessa. That's it. Yep. Once they have Odessa, they'll have a complete linkage to the Russian group. They'll have Ukraine, at least the entire eastern half of it, surrounded, and they will have cut off Ukraine from being able to make ocean shipments, and they will own all of the Black Sea.
Absolutely correct.
And they're basically really close. I am glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because I thought the same thing. But I didn't say it because I didn't really have any evidence. I go, because the narrative was counter-narrative. The narrative was Russia's just crazy and mean, and they just said, we're just going to go into Ukraine and kick their ass. And then the Ukrainians fought back, and they were surprised, and they're foolish because they underestimated and how stupid and ridiculous they are. And I thought, that doesn't sound like Russia. I'm not saying they're great actors on the world stage, but they're not dumb.
No, they're not dumb.
They're acting like they're stupid, and these are not stupid people. They know what's at risk. So why would they do that? And I thought what you thought. In World War I, if I can show you this, what was it?
Actually, if you look at what happened in Kursk in the Battle of Kursk in World War II, they did a similar thing as well. But yeah, you go back to Sam. Yeah,
Kursk battle, World War
II. Yeah, Zhukov, the brilliant strategist, he lured the Germans into the battle, and then the two pincers close around it, and they create what they call the cauldron, and they start to hammer the cauldron, and that's when the Germans realize that they were trapped, and Hitler promotes von Paulus to field marshal, and because the idea is that German field marshal has never surrendered, so the field marshal is supposed to kill himself, which von Paulus didn't. But that's exactly what they did. That's the cauldron.
They tricked them. So they brought in. Here's the first picture. So here's how it looked like. They allowed the Russians allowed the Nazis to seem as though they were breaking through their lines and pushing in on them. That's what the bulge is in the center. But really, it was a trick, so they could do this. Now the Nazis were into the Russian area, and the Nazis thought they were doing great. But what that allowed was the Russians to then go behind their lines and cut them off.
Yep.
And they lost a lot of dudes there.
The reason is, Marcus, is that when they fight this kind of war, it's not, as we know in the West, it's not about bombardment and things like that. This is a killing war,
right?
And you can't defeat an army unless you can't shut down an army unless you defeat it, and that's what they're doing there. There are no niceties in this situation, and I can tell you, from my background, things that I can tell you that there are no niceties in this at all. It is what it is. Yeah.
My father was in the United States military, and my grandfather fought in World War II, and I have family members who are literally in all 5 branches: Coast Guard, Navy, Army, Marines, Air Force. And my father said one thing. He goes, because we would watch action movies, and he would go, "Yeah, that's cool." And I go, "Isn't that great?" And he goes, "Here's the thing. War's evil and horrible, and when you actually get into it, it's a lot of atrocities on both sides." So we would watch these movies about World War II, and my dad was going, "Yeah, you should join the military, and we have to have a strong defense." But this idea that the Americans never committed any atrocities, and they always did the good things, and the bad guys always did the bad things.
Wrong.
He's like, that's gone. You go to war, people are killing each other. They're trying to survive. It's a horrible situation to put humans in, and humans act their worst. And I was like, oh. So that's what you're talking about, Battle of Kursk. I thought this might have been like the Battle of the Somme. For this,
the Russians the Russians didn't take part in that. It was mostly British and French and Germans. Yeah.
True, but I imagine that they have some smart people who studied military war. And one of the things about the Somme was, so I can't see it here, but basically, so in World War I, the Germans wanted to take on the French. And what they did was they needed, basically there was this German general, I forget his name.
Is it von Moltke?
I think so.
Von Moltke is there was the 2 von Moltkes.
Yeah, Erich von Falkenhayn, German general.
Falkenhayn. Yes.
Battle of Verdun, Battle of the Somme. So basically, here's what they did. Germany wanted to take on France in World War I, but they thought the French army was bigger than theirs. And they go, okay, well, that's not good. So we can't win in a fair fight. So what we need to do is have the French come and attack us in an area where we already have the high ground. So it'll be a losing situation from them, and they'll just get lots of their troops slaughtered, and we can just kill off a lot of these French guys and reduce their numbers, so that when we want to fight a real war, later on their numbers are reduced. And the question was, how do you get the French to walk into a trap? And they go, well, the French are a passionate people, which they are. Nothing wrong with that. They have this place called the Somme. It's an area of France that's really important to France, and French believes is key to their culture. So the Germans realized that the Somme is right on the border with Germany, just like Kiev is right on the border with Russia.
Mhm.
And they said, we can easily launch a surprise attack, take over the Somme. It's right across the border. But then we don't push into France. We'll just sit there at the top of the Somme. The French will be upset that there's Germans who took over their sacred key part of their land that's part of their culture and legends going back to whatever. And they will send every guy they have to take over that thing, not because they're thinking clearly, but because they're upset. And when you get upset, you don't think clearly, you make mistakes and people die. And it worked. The problem was the French had more people who were willing to die than the Germans did. But the Germans, that's the only reason it didn't work, was so the Germans came into an area, they knew the French would throw everything at to sacrifice out of culture, not out of strategic importance, because the Somme was not strategic. They got the high hill, and then the French just kept sending thousands of guys, and they just got slaughtered, and you had millions of people get slaughtered. That's what I thought of when I saw what they did with Kiev. Was, okay, so you invade Kiev. Here it is. It's right on the border of Belarus and Russia. Get right in there. The Ukrainians will spend everything they have to defend Kiev. So you tie up all their forces, you get them distracted, you get a lot of people killed off, when your real plan is over here. But now they spent so many people and weapons and missiles and tanks going to the north when you're attacking in the clear opposite side of the country.
And what is also happening now is that not now, it's been happening over the last few weeks, is that while the Ukrainians have been moving their assets back, they've been targeted from the air.
Right.
So you have missile attacks taking out weapons loads, taking tanks, taking out trucks. They're getting hit. So that movement of materiel is now being targeted as well.
Yeah.
Just a few days ago, there was a cargo plane landing in Odessa with a weapons load, and that was shot out of the sky. Just boom, like that. So it's shutting down the weapons transfers.
That's the other thing, is that since the West isn't sending jets and isn't going to fight an air war, Russia, I know in the West they go, Russia doesn't have control of the skies. I don't really buy that. I mean, maybe they don't have complete control, but they're certainly able to blow anything up, and the Ukrainians can't really seem to do much about it.
It's called, the Russians call it air supremacy, which means they don't have superiority, they have supremacy, which means they may still get shot down, but they have enough freedom in the sky to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
And that also was the same. That was the same kind of tactic they used in Battle of Kursk as well. The same kind of thing. They did air supremacy, not superiority. Because if you look at what happened in World War II when the invasion took place on Normandy area, the Allies had air superiority. That means they had the freedom of the skies. There were only 2 German fighters that swept the beaches of Normandy that day. And the rest of it was all Allied aircraft. So, it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, that makes a lot more sense to me than Russia's stupid and crazy, and they didn't really think it through, and they underestimated the Ukrainians, and they just went in there, and how dumb and stupid and backwards they are.
No.
Which is the narrative we're hearing, and I'm like, okay, well, that just doesn't sound like them. I mean, maybe they were, I'm not there, but I'm like, this strategy of they tried to tie up the Ukrainian forces, distract them from the real goal, and get them to move all the resources to here, when they were actually trying to go here. I mean, these are here's Kiev, or Kyiv, and it's
Kiev.
I'm not going to get into. My dad said the same thing.
I'm glad your dad's a smart man.
Yeah, I'm like, it's called Kyiv, and he goes, "Oh, it's Kiev. It's always been Kiev." And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Marcus, they'll have to change the recipe for chicken Kiev. Then.
Yeah, that's what he's like. Chicken Kiev. I ate chicken Kiev as a boy. I'm pushing 70. It's Kiev. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So, And again, Russia should not have invaded a country. Shooting civilians is bad. Invading a country is bad. What I'm concerned about is lies being told to you in what's supposed to be a democracy.
Absolutely.
We're supposed to be a democracy, supposed to have freedom of the press, freedom of the information. Everybody's going on about how Russians are misinformed because they have a state-owned news. I've done 2 episodes of Counter Narrative, and we're exposing all sorts of stuff that most people who are watching this, have no idea. So whose media is not being honest to whose people? Obviously, the Russian media is not being honest to the Russian people, but where's this concept that the Western media is being honest to the American people? I've done 2 shows with tons of articles that nobody has any clue about, that talk about a real problem, and they're being told there's nothing to the neo-Nazi problem when there actually is. So whose media is lying to whose people? Are we really that better? Because it seems like our media is also having a narrative that benefits the government and also lying to us in order to trick us through misinformation. How does that make us better than Russia?
Now, one interesting tell has been that there has been prominent newspapers and TV channels are finally admitting, or not directly admitting, but admitting by providing a proper and better coverage than what they did before. They're actually starting to tell the truth because they can see that their narrative is failed dramatically. So they're now saying, this can't go on like this. So
I hope so. Again, I'm not siding with Russia. I'm siding with the truth. I've had people say, how dare you attack Ukraine? And I go, what am I doing to attack Ukraine? Bringing up facts and the truth? How is it wrong to inform fellow American citizens of the facts of the situation so that you can make an informed decision? I thought that's what democracy was about. I thought that's what Western values were about. I thought that was the total opposite of how a totalitarian government is. And yet when I do that, I'm criticized. And I go, you know where else they criticize people for saying things that go against the government narrative? Totalitarian countries.
Yeah.
So you're acting just like them while saying what they do is bad, while you're doing the same thing.
It's the uncomfortable truth. That's what it is. Now, Marcus, let me know when you want to wrap things up.
We'll wrap things up. We're going to wrap things up now. Bill, 2 minutes, last minute comments to the public. What do you think people should know?
Well, they need to look carefully at the news sources. Look at 2 and 3 news sources and just read between the lines, because somewhere in there you'll find the truth. It is, sorry, I have to say it that way, but I actually look at several sources and before I make up my mind. And then I understand. I say, okay, that makes sense.
Wow. I remember my grandfather telling me that. I mean, I grew up as a boy and I was taught that as an American, you look at both sides and you make up your opinion for you. They don't talk like that anymore.
No.
But I remember as a boy, they literally taught us that in school. And they go, look at both sides, think for yourself, make your own decision. That's what it means to be an American. You live in a free country with free information. You're supposed to think. You're supposed to have your own opinion. You're supposed to be able to debate other people.
Yeah.
When did that become bad?
Yeah, this is it. It shouldn't have changed. I got to tell you one more thing before I say goodbye to you. Is that if you notice that my handle is Bull Durham, and that's because one of my favorite films of all time, that fabulous Kevin Costner Susan Sarandon baseball movie.
Yeah,
it's like if he gives me starts me off with a fastball, I'm taking him downtown.
He was a great I grew up watching a lot of Kevin Costner movies. My dad loved that guy. And hey, I just want to be clear to everybody, because I know they're going to say this: invading another country is wrong, shooting civilians is wrong, but misinforming the public,
that's worse.
It's not democracy and it's not Western. and it's not an American value, at least not traditionally. And so I don't think I'm doing anything wrong by trying to make sure that people are informed. And I think that you, if you're watching this video, should be alarmed that I, a novice, am educating you on a lot of articles. How come you don't know this already? How come I didn't know this already? How come I had to do 2 shows? How come I did 1 show, thought I covered it, and then people started coming out of the woodwork like Bull Durham saying, here's even stuff you didn't even see. Why are we finding all this stuff that's in the mainstream news and it's just not reported on? Why is that? That's not good. It's not democracy. It's not Western. It's not freedom. So it's something other than those things. And it's kind of what they do in totalitarian countries. And I hate to see us backslide on democracy in our own country.
Yep.
All
Let
right,
me know when you
Bull
next. Yep. Let me know when you want next catch up. And, we'll
email
team up.
me. So I'm going to email me. I hope you got my email. Here it is.
Yes, I've got your email.
Send me an email, and I'll email you before the next show, and we'll go from there.
All right. Fabulous.
Thank you, sir. It has been a pleasure. Thank you all for watching another episode of Counter Narrative. Sorry it took so long, but I think you saw we got a lot of information that you're not going to find anywhere else. So if you watch the first episode of Counter Narrative, you're going to see stuff that no one else is talking about. And you've watched this next episode of Counter Narrative, you're going to see even more information on the neo-Nazi problem in Ukraine, how you're being lied to. The point is that you get the information and you make up your own mind. We show you mainstream sources that the media is not covering, and you should be concerned that you aren't being informed of these things. Always think, always question, and never buy the mainstream narrative. Thank you and good night.
Good night.